Hey everyone, my name is Ron, and I'm a principal research manager in the Cybersecurity Research Center at Ben-Gurion University of the Negev. My research group focuses on utilizing AI for cybersecurity purposes. My talk today is based on our recent activity in the domain of human factors and cybersecurity. Social engineering attacks have changed in recent years. Specifically, social engineering attacks goes way beyond phishing. Examples for other attack vectors that exploit the human factor vulnerability are password cracking, drive-by download attack, permission abuse, and certificate manipulation. In addition, social engineering attacks are no longer limited to PCs. In recent years, we have noticed that common social engineering attack vectors have variants to smartphones and social media. For instance, by exploiting the Android permission mechanism to acquire sensitive permission, or by exploiting Facebook posts and messages to initiate phishing attacks. After analyzing multiple social engineering attack case studies and their implementation on different platforms, we had one main conclusion. The skills needed by a user to mitigate different types of attacks are not necessarily the same. In other words, it is quite possible that a user will own the skill required to mitigate one type of attack, and at the same time missing the skills required to mitigate another attack. As a result, we believe that the security awareness of user cannot be measured accurately using a unified measure that do not distinguish between different attack vectors. Despite those changes, most existing solutions do not distinguish between different types of attacks and platforms. Existing solutions can be classified into two classes: evaluation tools and mitigation tools. Evaluation tools are methods that can be used to identify the vulnerable users. These methods include self-reported measures, such as interviews, surveys, and questionnaires, and attack simulations. Mitigation tools are methods that can be used for increasing the security awareness of users, such as training workshop, or method that can be used to reduce the attack surface by preventing the exploitation of the human factor vulnerability, such as email protection tools or browser isolation. However, existing solutions have several limitations. For instance, questionnaires and surveys are based on the self-reported behavior of the user and require the subject active involvement and collaboration. These methods tend to be very subjective, biased, and consuming significant human resources. Therefore, they are less scalable and cannot be performed continuously. Attack simulation measures the momentary behavior of subjects during specific events, and are mostly limited to phishing. These methods are very sensitive to environmental and contextual factors, and therefore can be very biased. In addition, they cannot be used to evaluate the information security awareness of users continuously. Besides that, since most of the simulations are based on phishing attacks, they cannot be used to evaluate the security awareness of users to other attack vectors. Security awareness training workshops are usually performed using videos, games, and posters in a controlled training environment. The problem with training workshops is that the behavior of users in the workshops does not necessarily reflect the behavior of user in his natural environment. In addition, the fact that the employer forced the employees to participate in the workshop caused lower user engagement to the training process. In addition, the fact that the employer forced the employee to participate in the workshop caused low user engagement to the training process. Methods that are used to reduce the attack surface, such as email protection and browser isolation, can prevent a specific exploitation technique. However, they leave the vulnerability unpatched. In addition, these methods are mostly limited to specific environment, such as the user working environment. When leaving the vulnerability unpatched, the attacker can exploit the vulnerability using other exploitation techniques, which are not covered by the countermeasure. In addition, most countermeasures cannot be used to protect the user in other environments, such as when working from home. In order to address those limitations, we developed SafeMind. SafeMind is an automated framework for continuously and objectively evaluating the resilience of users to specific type of social engineering attacks. At the early beginning of the research, we defined 3 critical success factors. The first one is understanding what to measure. Concretely, what are the criteria for a security-aware user? And what are the importance of different criteria in mitigating different types of attacks? The second critical success factor is understanding how to evaluate those criteria. And the final success factor is understanding how to make a behavioral change that will last long. In this talk, I will focus on the first 2 critical success factors. In order to define the criteria for a security-aware user, we systematically explored social engineering attack case studies and identified the technologies that are compromised by the attacker. Next, we enumerated security countermeasures that can be used to protect these technologies and identify human factor vulnerabilities that are exploited by the attacker. Based on these vulnerabilities, we formulated the criteria required from a user to mitigate the attack. The outcome of this procedure is more than 30 criteria for a security-aware user. After formulating the criteria, there is a need to estimate the importance of different criteria in mitigating different types of social engineering attacks. In order to tackle this problem, we develop an expert-based procedure for ranking the criteria with respect to the different attacks. The procedure was based on a well-known technique called AHP, which allowed us to reduce the ranking time to few minutes instead of few hours. We let 17 security experts to rank the criteria using our methods. Here, you can see the finite models created to 4 different attacks: password-based attacks, application-based attacks, phishing attacks, and man-in-the-middle attacks. As can be noticed, the models are quite different, and the importance of criteria is distributed differently across those models. Here you can see the different models created for man-in-the-middle attacks and phishing attacks with respect to the browser technologies. As you can see, for the phishing attack, the dominant criteria were does not send sensitive information via HTTP and does not insert private information on unvalidated websites. In contrast, for the man-in-the-middle attacks, the dominant criteria were different. For instance, delete unknown certificate from the device and does not approve unknown certificates. After understanding what to measure, we can now focus on the second critical success factor, understanding how to measure those criteria continuously and objectively. We developed three complementary solutions: an endpoint solution, a network-based solution, and the attack simulation framework. The endpoint solution includes agents for smartphones and PC. They collect multiple sensors data from the device, including the installed application, their permissions, source and rating, mail activity, security settings, password management, social network activity, and many more. Using these sensors, we created a profile of the user with respect to the different criteria. The endpoint solutions can derive a very accurate profile of the user. However, they are slightly intrusive and require prior installation. We want to take the assessment one step further and derive a profile of the user passively. To do so, we develop network-based solution, which derive a profile of the user solely by analyzing his network traffic. In order to evaluate the criteria, we utilize common techniques such as domain categorization, deep packet inspection, and the assessment of application-level protocols. In addition, we develop an attack simulation framework. Within this framework, we implemented 20 variants of attacks, including permission abuse for mobile and PC, certificate alerts, word macros, and malicious PDF documents, and phishing through email, SMS, and even Facebook posts. Here is a short demo of the attack simulation framework. On the left side, we can see the operator dashboard that can be used to configure the attack. On the right side, we can see the employee's smartphone, which receives a notification claiming that your Facebook session was expired. When the user presses on the notification, the phishing web page is presented. For the evaluation, we conducted an experiment involving 160 participants that installed the framework for a duration of 7 weeks. We simulated 4 different attacks on the users: phishing, spam, permission abuse, and certificate manipulation. In addition to the endpoint and network solutions, we used the traditional security questionnaires for baseline. In figure 1, the upper figure, we classify the subject into 3 security awareness levels: low, medium, and high. This classification was based on the score derived by the framework. Then, we calculated the success rate in mitigating the attack simulation for each security awareness level. The results show that users classified as with high awareness using the endpoint and network-based solution, which described by the purple and blue bars, were more likely to mitigate the attack in compared to users classified as with low awareness. In figure 2 below, we analyzed the score in a higher resolution using moving average. As can be noticed, the success rate of users in mitigating the attack is very correlative to the score derived using the endpoint and network-based solutions. In other words, users with high score were more likely to mitigate the attack, and users with low score was more likely to fail in the attack. On the other end, the classification made based on the security questionnaire, which described by the red bar, was not correlative to the success rate in mitigating that attack. The main conclusions from the evaluation are that self-reported behavior of subjects may differ significantly from their actual behavior. In contrast, security awareness scores derived from objective measures, such as data collected by endpoint and network-based solutions, are highly correlated with the user's success in mitigating social engineering attacks. Thank you very much.
Hey everyone, thank you for participating virtually in my talk today. I would like to refer several questions that raised by the attendants. So the first question asked by Fernando was, how do you balance the holistic aspect of attacks with the privacy need of individuals beyond their role as employees? So I will distinguish between the two different cases of the study, or the two different scenarios in the study. In the first scenario, we collect all the information, all the raw data, in order to conduct the research, in order to understand what are the criteria that we need to analyze and to be included in the score that will later reflect the security awareness and their ability to mitigate the different type of attacks. The reason for collecting all the raw data is because we cannot know in advance what are the exact measures and how to analyze all the data and how to create the features that can be later be used to calculate the score. However, in the system that will eventually run on the employee phone or PC, we can only use an aggregated data, or extract the features on the device and send only aggregated data to the employer system in order to create the assessment. And in this way, we can create a profile of the user without revealing private attribute of the user. Second question asked by Fernando was about the demographics of the participant in the study. So in this study, we use ungraduated and graduated students from 2 universities in Israel. They was at the age between 20 to 35. And they have different, they come from different faculties, so they have different knowledge about security. If you want to get into the details of all the demographic attribute of the user that participate in this research, you can refer to the paper that we publish, and you have all the information about the demographic, and we also analyze the impact of different demographic attributes on the security awareness of users. Okay, this is 2 questions that were asked during the session, and let me see if I missed anything from the start of the talk. So, okay. We'll appreciate any peer review papers. So as I said before, we published 2 academic papers. One present all the theoretical background and theoretical aspects of calculating the score, especially how to calculate different scores for different type of attacks, and how to enumerate all the criteria for a security-aware user. And the second paper that recently published on Kai is talk about the measurements and the experiments. So I will put into the chat links for both of these papers so you can get into all the details of this research. We also have a patent approved that describe all the framework and the idea of continuously analyzing user behavior in order to measure its robustness to social engineering attacks. Let's see if there is any other question. Thank you for all the participants that enjoyed the session. It's really, really nice to hear that. So I see that there isn't any other question that asked by the audience. So I think we can end for now. And thank you very much, all of you, for participating in the session. Goodbye.